Welcome to the Shyam Sharma Show. Today on the show, we talk about a ridiculous letter written by the Archbishop of Gandhinagar, and I offer my rebuttal to it. And renowned actor Prakash Raj, who's quite well known for defending the freedom of expression for people in India, actually is taking steps to curb that freedom of expression for someone else. So we talk about that a little bit as well. And without further ado, let's jump into the show. Hello, and welcome back to the Shyam Sharma Show. We've been away for a little bit, but we're back again with a brand spanking new episode. Now, before I start, I want to do a couple of things. First, I want to thank all the new subscribers for joining the show. Thank you and welcome. It's great to have you, and I hope you enjoy today's show and all the future episodes as well. And secondly, I want to also take this opportunity to thank a few people who've helped me out in the past few days, particularly Anand Ranganathan, Ashu, and Nupur ma'am from Op India, because all of you have shared my video, watched my video, and encouraged people to come and follow the show and follow me as well. And that's something you really didn't have to do. And also thank you for your kind words as well. I really appreciate it. And on top of that, it's very validating to me in terms of what I'm doing for the show, because this is something I'm very passionate about myself. And it's always good to see that other people are appreciating what I'm doing. So again, thank you very much to all of you. And if my viewers want to follow any of those people, I really do think you should, because they're great accounts who have some very balanced opinions that I really do think people should go check out. So their Twitter bios will be available in the links below. So if you're not following them already, I'm guessing a lot of you already are. But if you're not following them already, go ahead and give them a follow. All right, so let's start with the first story of the day. Now, a lot of people know who Prakash Raj is. He's a famous actor from the South, and he's worked in quite a few Bollywood movies as well. And he's a very well-known actor in general, and he's been a fairly vocal critic of the Moody government, where he's come out and he's made statements towards why the Moody government was silent after Gauri Lankesh's murder. And he also said that the Moody government and UP Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath should get a national award for acting and things of that nature. So he's someone who believes in using his freedom of expression, which is great. And that's something he fights for quite vehemently as well. But news has broken recently that he has been taking steps himself to curb somebody else's freedom of expression. Now, what's happened is he has sent a legal notice to lawmaker Pratap Simha for trolling him on Twitter in October with comments that disturbed his personal life. Now, I'm going to read what Pratap Simha wrote. I personally don't like what he wrote to Prakash Raj. I thought these were very classless comments and very, very insensitive comments. Particularly one line out of what he wrote is something that I don't really agree with, and I think that's something that we should condemn Pratap Simha for, because that really is lacking in class. So what he wrote was, being sad due to your son's death, having left your wife and ran after a dancer, do you, Mr. Raj, have any right, legitimacy or worthiness to say anything to Yogi Modi? Now again, like I just said before, these comments in the tweet are very classless, and that's not something very becoming of an elected official in India. However, as classless as they are, they're still words. And what Prakash Raj has gone on and said, he said that I've sent a legal notice to Pratap Simha as a citizen of this country for the way he has trolled me, which has disturbed my personal life. I'm asking him to answer legally, and if he doesn't, I will be taking legal action against him. So he's threatening to take legal action against someone who has written some comments about him, which he considers to be trolling, where he himself a couple of months ago was giving similar comments. I agree they were not as classless as that line in the tweet that Mr. Simha has towards Mr. Raj. But those were still comments. Those were still remarks. Those were still snide remarks directed towards elected officials and the Prime Minister of the country. So I agree that one of them is a little worse than the other, but both of them are still usages of the freedom of expression that the Indian Constitution guarantees. So it's a little rich that when it comes to his freedom of expression, that has to be sacrosanct. But when it comes to other people saying stuff about him on social media, that is tantamount to issuing a legal notice, and that's something that shouldn't be allowed, and legal action should be taken to shut that person down. I don't think that's right. As far as I'm aware, he has not threatened any violence against Prakash Raj or has not threatened to cause violence himself against Prakash Raj. So these double standards are something that we need to fight on each aisle, whether we're on the left, whether we're on the right. This is something that we need to fight together to kind of hold both sides to one similar standard. That's the only way that we can make this political conversation go forward. Otherwise, this is just going to devolve into a cultural war, which it kind of is already. All right, now our next piece of news is a real cracker, folks, because there's this priest based in Gandhinagar, Gujarat. He's the Archbishop of Gandhinagar. His name's Thomas Makwan. He recently came out with a letter. He wrote a letter to all Christians in India, urging them to vote against nationalist forces that are threatening to take over the country. And the letter is as absurd as it sounds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this letter through, and I'm going to offer my rebuttal to what this letter says. And this letter is also significant because it's come at a very significant time. It's come at a time when Gujarat is about to go into the polls. And this is pretty much tantamount to a religious body meddling in the political affairs of a country or a state and trying to affect the political outcome of an election. So this sets a dangerous precedent if we just let it slide. So I think it's important that we talk about it. I think it's important that we condemn it. And I'm just going to go through it in a second as well. All right, so the letter starts saying, "Your Eminences, Graces, and Lordships, greetings and prayerful wishes from Archbishop Thomas Makwan. The dates of Gujarat State Assembly have been declared. The results of this election are significant and it will have its repercussions and reverberation throughout our beloved nation. It will influence the future course of the country. We are aware that the secular and democratic fabric of our country is at stake. Human rights are being violated. The constitutional rights are being trampled." Now, all of these three sentences that he said, he has provided, of course, no proof of how human rights are being violated, how the secular and democratic fabric of our country is at stake or is being torn apart. There is no proof of any of those things. I think it's important that he's talking in the superlatives here. It's designed to stoke panic. It's designed to stoke panic. It's designed to stoke outrage. It's not really designed to have some sort of a conversation or really point towards some sort of an issue. It really isn't. Then he goes on to say, "Not a single day goes without an attack on our churches, church personnel, faithful, or institutions." And again, there is absolutely, as you've already guessed by now, no proof attached to where in India there are attacks on churches and church personnel and Christians every day. In fact, there have been articles in the past couple of years, I've provided links to them below in the description here as well, of outlets like Op India and a journalist called Rupa Subramanya who wrote an article in First Post debunking a lot of these myths that churches are being targeted by some kind of Hindu fundamentalists. In fact, she talks about, in both of these articles, in fact, talks about a lot of these so-called attacks that happened in these churches and in these areas, which were either hoaxes or these were burglaries with not really any religious motivation. So again, like I said, the links to those articles are down below, so go check those out because I think it's very important in this context. Then he says there is a growing sense of insecurity among the minorities, OBCs, BCs, poor, etc. Nationalist forces are on the verge of taking over the country. The election results of Gujarat State Assembly can make a difference. So somehow in our popular parlance and in our political conversation, being a nationalist has become a bad thing. Being a nationalist has almost become a swear word. You kind of notice this throughout the world. You notice that in America, where being a nationalist is a bad thing. You notice that in Europe, where being a nationalist is a bad thing. You've been seeing this in India for decades, where if you consider yourself a nationalist and if you take pride in your national identity and who you are and what you've achieved, that's a bad thing. The communists and the postmodernists that have had a stranglehold over the political conversation for such a long time and the education sector for such a long time have just inculcated this belief that being a nationalist, wanting a strong country, wanting a prosperous country, wanting a country that is protected from external threats is a bad thing. And it's also suggesting something that's, I think, even more sinister than creating nationalists as a bad word. And what that is trying to divide India among sort of religious lines. And that's because if the archbishop of a community, and a religious community which is a lot more organized than the Hindu community, so to say, if someone like that says that nationalist forces are bad and we should fight against nationalist forces, then you're kind of insinuating that Christians cannot be nationalists. And that is something I take a lot of offense to, because there are thousands and thousands of Christians out there in India today who want India to succeed, who want India to be a powerful, prosperous nation, as much as I do, maybe more. And not just that, let's just take one example from India. Let's just take the Indian military. There's been so many prominent Christians, leaders in the Indian military, when it comes to the heads of the army, heads of the navy, heads of the air force, and countless personnel. They've had Christians who have fought and died for India. And of course, I don't want to speak for them, but I think it's a pretty safe guess to take that they joined the military because they wanted to serve the country. They wanted to make sure that the country was protected from any outside dangers, and they wanted to see a strong and prosperous India. So to insinuate with this letter that somehow Christians should not be nationalists is very dangerous. It's a very dangerous idea to propagate, particularly for a religious head. And I think it's also important to point out that from Twitter, from what I've seen on Twitter and what I've seen on social media, there have been a lot of people, a lot of Christians who have come out and condemned this as well. And they've said that this is wrong, because it's perfectly possible for a Christian to be a nationalist. And by the way, this is not even the first article like this that's been published that kind of is trying to sow panic among the Christian community and is trying to create a divide between the Christian community and the rest of India. There's another article that came out back in August, which was written by F.E. Noronia and appeared in a magazine called Renova Cow, which is a Christian magazine in Goa. And he claimed that there is a state of constitutional holocaust in the country, which is a very grave claim to make. And completely inaccurate, by the way, as well. The article also urged Goa voters to vote against communal forces in order to halt the march of nationwide fascism. That's why it becomes so important to counter propaganda like this. All right, then the letter goes on to say, the bishops of Gujarat state request you to organize prayer services in your parishes and convents so that we may have such people elected in the Gujarat State Assembly who would remain faithful to our Indian constitution and respect human beings without any sort of discrimination. So I am not 100% of course sure which party the Archbishop here is talking about, but I think it's quite safe to assume that because the only other major player in the Gujarat elections is the Congress party, he's probably referring to the Congress party. And this is actually a funny one. Calling Congress party a party who would remain faithful to our Indian constitution and respect every human being without any sort of discrimination. Ooh, goodness me, that's rich. That is a rich one. There has not been any party in India that has worked harder to create divisions among people than the Congress party. That's a rich one. Then he goes on to say, the recitation of the Holy Rosary at individual, community, family, and parish levels will be of great help. Encourage your faithful to pray to the Rosary. Time and again, the Rosary has proved to be a protective hand. History bears witness to this statement. It saved Europe during the victory at Lepanto from being taken over by people of other faith. And this line is just a winner in this article, folks, because this line is, if you just read this line, it's a pretty nationalist statement. To say that the Rosary helped Christians defend their land from people who sought to take over and eliminate them, that's a very nationalist statement to make. So the Archbishop here in this letter claims to be anti-nationalists, but then makes this very nationalist statement about how the Rosary helped the Christians defend their land. So the contradictions are just dime a dozen here in this article. Communist governments and dictators in a number of countries have been tumbled in the path through the protecting hand of our beloved Mother Mary. Oh, and this is a good one too. This is probably my favorite line from the whole letter. It says, it has brought the level of abortion rates in Poland from 30% to 4%. And I think this is important, and I think this is something that we need to call out certain sections of the population, certain sections of the intelligentsia, and certain sections of the media, and certain sections of the feminist movement as well. Because they've been very, very sensitive about what Hindu patriarchy is and how it's important to smash the Hindu patriarchy, because this is a very patriarchal statement to make. This should be a statement that is deeply offensive to pretty much everyone, because this is the Archbishop of Gandhinagar openly stating that he is anti-abortion. And I have not seen any bit of outrage in India, in the media, or anything of that sort about this line in this letter. The anti-abortion sentiment in the church is actually very strong in India and across the globe. But you don't hear that. You don't hear that from anyone, any of those people who want to smash the patriarchy in India. You don't hear the condemnation of that. I am very firmly believe that the woman should have the right to do what she wants with her body, particularly when it comes to pregnancy and issues like that, because that's something that she has to deal with for 9 months. And I think it is a bit disheartening when we have these bigotry of low expectations, as I talked about before, where if another culture does it, we prefer to leave them to their devices because that's their culture. But if the dominant culture in the country tends to do it, or the majority culture in the country rather tends to do it, then that's something that should be called out and is wrong and is patriarchal and this and that. Then the letter goes on to say, it will save our country from nationalist forces too. Even the Lord, while he was praying in the Garden of Gethsemane, had asked his disciple to watch and pray. Let us take his advice seriously. Let us trust in our Lord Jesus and ask his help. We keep Mother Mary with us as a great support. Thank you in anticipation. So that's the letter essentially. And as you can see from the letter, it's very dishonest, if not downright disingenuous, which I believe that it is. So again, this is something that needs to be called out. And I must say that quite a few Christians have come out and spoken out against this letter, which is very heartening to see. There are no doubt tons and tons of nationalist Christians out there who want to see India as a strong, prosperous, and successful nation. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Now in my YouTube video of the day, I want to actually share a product review. So there's this phone that's recently come out. It's called the Razer Phone, and it's by a company called Razer that is known usually for making gaming laptops. And they've come out with a phone, and it's getting a lot of good press. It's their first attempt really at making a smartphone. And by all accounts, they seem to have knocked it out of the park. It's a great phone. I'm personally thinking of getting it. Have a look at the video and tell me what you think. If you like it, go ahead and get it. All right, and that's the show. Thank you very much for watching the show. I appreciate you. Thank you again to all the new subscribers who have joined the show. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you did, please check out all the other episodes that the show has done as well. And if you're enjoying them too, please like the show, share the show, tell your friends about the show. Tell them to tell their friends about the show. And, you get my gist. And also, subscribe to the show's channel. It helps us out. And also, you will be the first to know as soon as the new video drops. Again, thank you for watching. We are going to be back again on Wednesday with a brand spanking new episode of The Sham Sharma Show. Until then, stay subscribed, stay happy, stay healthy, and I'll see you soon.